From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
This message is an email. It came from Lauren E. Lauren, you know who you are. You said, my husband and I are currently driving through rural Ohio and a billboard caught my eye. Something, something, radioactive groundwater, something, something, visit radiumvalley.org.
Okay.
Well, okay, I thought it's rural Ohio and I can only read so much Wikipedia. First, the website is brilliant. Early internet design being revived, but it piqued my interest in this entire idea of radioactive brine. MIT says it's an interesting supply chain. Scientific American says it's questionable. Either way, I get this visual of our roads glowing green because of it all. Anyway, I've always wanted to find a random thing that might be interesting enough to send to y'all, and maybe this is it. Stay safe, Lauren. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for writing in, because you know that the three of us, as well as Doc Holliday, and just now, I guarantee you, just now, this is what she did, we all went to radiumvalley.org. And
it is a delight.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's for a good cause, guys.
You're right.
I feel like we have to say that.
You're right. The first thing you get is a giant, full-on purple. This site is owned and published by CECA Inc., whatever that is. Then below that, you get a great photoshopped image of thunderstorms and lightning and a nice little quaint wooden sign that's got a pretty noticeable radioactive symbol on it. And it says, "Welcome to Radium Valley, where radioactive waste is good for business and good for you."
Not to mention the classic glow effect on the words Radium Valley, like Photoshop 1998 101. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
As a partially colorblind person, I am digging this, because if these colors are bright enough for me to differentiate, I can only imagine what it looks like to you guys.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they're screaming.
It is an awful thing knowing that I'm getting some like small little extra experience than you when I just look at a photo, Ben. That really does hurt me, and I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's I wouldn't have it any other way. Tried on those colorblind corrective glasses, which was a super cool experience. Nothing to do with radium, I hope. And then I went back.
Yeah,
I went back to the way. Yeah, I like it. I like where I'm at.
I dig it. I support you. Whatever.
So brine.
Brine,
though.
All right, well, let's jump into what else this thing says. It says, stop spreading radioactive brine, B-R-I-N-E, on our roads and land. And then it gives you the ABCs of brine. A, all over the place. Brine is being spread all over Ohio on township roads, county roads, private land, and public land. But after it rains or the snow is melted, it all flows into the wells, springs, ponds, rivers, and aquifers that we all share and use.
B, brine is radioactive. Brine is really oil field waste from gas and oil wells. ODNR tests prove that it contains high levels of radioactive radium. This is true.
This is true.
C is for cancer. Cancer is caused by high levels of radium.
Huh. Or can be caused. Cancer can be. Radium is one cause of cancer. How about that?
Yeah. And then a nice big old just stop brine.
Yep. Sign the petition, talk to your neighbors, opinion, give yours to a politician, put a sign in your yard. So this is a website that is attempting to give anyone who visits it information about this issue, radioactive brine. And it kind of tells you what it is, a byproduct of the creation of gas and oil, or at least the pulling of those substances from the earth. So let's learn a little bit more about it by going to the EPA. Now, there is a site on the EPA. It is epa.gov/radiation, and then you'll be able to find this from there. It's on TENORM, TENORM, oil and gas production wastes. On this website, it gives you the information that fracking, this new thing that we've talked about many times on this show, where substances are shot into the earth to break up shale, which is a type of stone, type of rock, and other formations of varying chemicals and substances. It breaks that stuff up, and that stuff shoots up through the ground up into an oil pipeline, and then it can be processed from there. Now, there are all kinds of issues with this substance, but let's specifically talk about what this Radium Valley website is about. There are other things that come up within that shale, other materials, other byproducts. Some of them are uranium and its decay products, thorium and its stuff, radium, potassium-40, lead-210, and polonium-210. These are all radioactive substances. They are naturally occurring radionuclides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, radionuclides. For some reason, my brain wanted to change that into something else.
There was the nucleotides. I remember that from school.
Yeah.
Not the same thing, I guess. I don't know. We're no scientists here.
Nuco buddies.
Yes, but these are also referred to as naturally occurring radioactive materials, or NORM. And this is a big problem. So what do you do with that stuff when you've got some of it, even just a little bit of it? Because a little bit of it is a problem. You can't just throw that stuff in, any old landfill. You can't just put it in a lake or a stream. You got to really take care of it. That's radioactive waste, my friends. It sticks around for a long, long time, and it hurts everything that it's near. Here's why it's a major problem and why we even know a lot about this. There is a story from Rolling Stone. It was published January 21st, 2020. It's written by Justin Noble, and it is titled America's Radioactive Secret. This is a large investigation, a large article. We recommend you take a look if you have the time, and we recommend you take the time to look at it. But it's going to be a chunk of your afternoon or morning or whenever you get to it. If you do look through it, it shows you and explains that this brine that we're talking about, it's really salty water with some other stuff in it. There are 10 gallons of this stuff produced for every 1 gallon of natural gas or petroleum that, the stuff that will become petroleum that comes out of the ground. So 10-to-1 ratio. This stuff, sometimes it's pretty contaminated with radioactive materials. Other times it is redonkulously contaminated. And there's no real way to know how much radioactive material is in this brine, or like one truckload of the brine, until you test the contents of a truck or a container that this stuff is put into. There are so many problems, Ben. Noel, I know you've looked at some of this stuff. I'll just hit a couple of them because it may not be good for us to go all the way down the rabbit hole here. But truck drivers who move this stuff, again, we're talking about 10-to-1 ratio for production here. So we're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of truckloads per day per site that is fracking and creating this stuff. They aren't wearing protective clothing for radioactive materials. In many times, in most of the time, at least that this article found in 2020, they aren't trained, and they aren't even aware that radioactive materials are on board their load that they're taking around to a dump site. The dump sites where they end up, if they end up at a landfill, many times are not capable of handling radioactive waste. So then that material ends up leaching back into the groundwater, into all other, all kinds of water sources that exist wherever that landfill is. What's another big thing? There are even some programs that are using this brine, because remember, it's salty water. They're using it in Ohio and a couple other places to de-ice the roads, or to pre-de-ice the roads as a preventative measure, right?
Yeah. There's so many, oh man, you're right. So many issues. So one thing we have to say is shout out to Science Daily as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's cited some research on how this stuff is created. So we want to be very clear. The companies fracking are not purposely pouring radium into the ground so far that we know of. When the water and the hydrochloric acid and other acids that they use are injected with sand and interact with this ancient shale, that reaction is where we see these radioactive things being created. The point about informed consent is huge. We can't recommend the Rolling Stone article enough because you'll be introduced to some truckers who were the main canaries in this dubious coal mine. That's where also I learned one of the street names for radium, which is terrifying. You guys caught this too, right? Bone Seeker.
Yeah. Oh, because
Yeah,
assumedly it actually can be responsible for bone cancer.
Yes. Yeah. It can be incorporated into the skeleton and cause sarcomas.
Yeah. It's really scary stuff. This is a gentleman named Peter who was driving a truck. I believe he was getting paid $16 an hour, at least according to that article. So that would be $20, and we know how the dollar fluctuates. Just kidding. He was saying, quote, a lot of guys are coming up with cancer or sores and skin lesions that take months to heal. And he goes on to say that he experiences regular headaches and nausea, numbness in his fingertips and face, and joint pain like fire. And that's because, again, they aren't wearing anything, to protect them. They're wearing a hard hat, steel-toed boots, and some standard, fare on their torso and everything, and that's about it. Really, really creepy stuff. And again, if you continue down that article, you'll learn exactly how radioactive some of these substances have been. There is a gentleman, a specialist, and I'm not even looking at the full article, honestly, because Zoom and recording and everything is causing this giant article to load super slowly. But there's an expert here that was saying if he had a beaker, like a small standard scientific beaker of this stuff sitting in his lab, and he was using it for testing, and it happened to just fall, the glass broke, and this brine spread across the floor, he's saying, and this is theoretically, they would shut down that entire building, or at least that side of the lab, because it would be dangerous for anyone else to work in there until it was fully cleaned up, and it's very difficult to do that.
And studies are currently limited. This is an ongoing story. To represent the industry's view, the people who condone or advocate for this practice as it's currently instituted, they'll say something like, yes, there is radiation exposure, but it is statistically insignificant. Longtime listeners, we've pointed this out before. A lot of stuff can give you low-level exposures to radiation, like bananas, for instance, but they're not gonna give you cancer. That is what I would say is the difference that industry advocates seem to be missing. Radium is, I hope it's not a hot take, radium is more dangerous than a banana. Something called a bone seeker, again, is very different from stuff you would find in the produce aisle. I think I haven't seen bone seekers in the produce aisle. Maybe they're next to the other weird stuff, like dragon fruit.
Well, and one of the big problems with bone seeker is that it's radiation within these substances that then kind of shoots off and attaches itself to anything in the environment, right? That could be your skin. It could be blocked by your skin. It doesn't get into your insides. You may be all right. But the worst part is if it gets onto dust, particles in the air that are small enough for you to inhale or ingest, then that gets into your body. That's when the bone seeking comes in. And it's really, really dangerous. And if you're just thinking about the thousands of truck drivers and the other specialists who are actively interacting with the substances, taking a giant hose, putting it into a container, opening it up, getting the brine into that other container. Some of it gets off, gets on their hands. Maybe they're breathing. Maybe they're breathing. Sometimes humans breathe. Generally, we do that. But
it's a very trendy thing.
it really is. It's just what got popular and it just stayed. The scariest part is everybody else. All the bystanders that have nothing to do with anything that's occurring here, and this stuff's getting into their drinking water. It's going into the land. It's hurting the animals. It's scary. And again, we're not saying that the companies fracking are purposefully trying to irradiate everything. It's just a really unfortunate side product, one of the unfortunate side products of the process itself.
Well said. And this, this feels like a call for us to do an updated episode, an addendum to our previous work on fracking itself, which goes deep, not just into the surface of the earth. To end on just a slightly less bleak note, well, there's one important thing we missed, which is that radiumvalley.org has a mascot. His name is Mortimus.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's a little bad clip art looking spooky skeleton with a radioactive symbol medallion, sort of like a la the Flava Flav clock. It looks like the kind of thing you'd see airbrushed on the side of a bad carnival haunted house.
Death is
We're
coming.
on a really kick-ass van. But Mortimus also has made the interesting fashion choice to have a sleeveless robe.